welcome to another episode of Life Telos' First Principle. Today I want to talk about values. So far in this series I've talked about the purpose of life, not based on an abstract philosophical idea, but based on biology. In other words, the purpose is implied by what life actually does. It turns out that life is also imbued with values. We tend to think that values are a human invention and that nature itself is value neutral. But let's challenge that notion. I'm going to turn it on its head. We really do give ourselves too much credit. What we do that no other species does is conceptualize values. We give them names and think about them. That's special. But we didn't just magically pull our values out of a hat. I will argue that they are baked into life. It is one thing to value life, which I think we ought to. It's another to realize that life itself provides the source of our values. After all, we are a form of life, so what is true about life is true about us. What I will say runs counter to the existentialist view that there is no inherent value to life and that we just have to make it up, believe in it, and then act on it. That's our great Sisyphean challenge. This may be heroic, but we can't shake the niggling feeling that our lives are built on a made-up fantasy. What I will say also goes against the postmodern deconstructionist view that values are merely social constructions fashioned through language for the purpose of wielding oppressive power over others. There are threads of truth in both philosophical traditions, but their blind spots are nothing short of profound. As a psychotherapist and life coach, I often support people in identifying their values. Sometimes this comes easily, as my clients have already given it some thought. Many times, however, naming values is elusive. It can seem too abstract. Certain words sound like what we're supposed to say, but there isn't a deep feeling about them. Whatever kind of person you might be, my hope is that by the end of this video, you'll have a strong way to connect deeply with your own values. I hope you will feel them in your blood and bones and not have the vague sense that you're just making stuff up and imposing it on a world otherwise devoid of values. Now let's dive into the heart of this exploration. Values emerge from life's relentless pursuit of survival, reproduction, and thriving. They aren't arbitrary human inventions. They're observable patterns and imperatives that appear across all forms of life, from the simplest cells to complex ecosystems. They scale up from biological basics to individual psychology to cultural expressions. But their roots are biologically intrinsic, not imposed top-down. I'll identify 12 of these core values, explaining each briefly with examples, including at the cellular level where possible. There are many more examples, but these 12 should be sufficient to make my point. This foundation shows how values aren't just philosophical abstractions. They're life's way of navigating reality. As we go, notice how they're interconnected, forming a holistic system. Make a mental note of this, as it will be important later when I talk about how humans have the unique capacity to reify and totalize these values. The consequences of this are not good, as we will see. First, life seeks and consumes resources while avoiding or fending off threats. This value drives life to actively pursue what sustains it and evade what harms it. At the cellular level, bacteria use chemotaxis to swim toward nutrients like glucose and away from toxins, guided by molecular sensors that decide directions for survival. In animals, it's foraging behaviors, avoiding predators, and immune responses fighting off pathogens. For humans, our economies are built on resource acquisition and defending ourselves from aggressors. Take a moment to reflect on how you value seeking what you want and need and protecting yourself, your loved ones, and your belongings from harm. Next, life eliminates waste and toxins. It values purging what could disrupt internal balance and hinder its functions. Cells employ mechanisms like exocytosis to expel waste or autophagy to recycle damaged components, as we can see in yeast cells degrading unnecessary proteins during starvation. Organisms like kidneys in mammals filter toxins, and ecosystems recycle dead matter through decomposers, maintaining clean environments for thriving. Do you not also value keeping your body and your home clean? Have you ever ended a toxic relationship? Then, life establishes homeostasis. It values stable internal conditions despite external changes. This is life's commitment to equilibrium. At the cellular level, ion pumps and membranes regulate pH and salt levels, as in red blood cells, balancing osmotic pressure. In multicellular life, it's body temperature regulation in birds or hormonal feedback in plants adjusting to drought, ensuring survival across fluctuating environments. Do you seek constant change and chaos? Or do you value having some routines and structure to your life amid the changes happening around you? Life grows and develops. It values expansion and maturation to reach reproductive capability and adapt to different niches. Cells divide through mitosis, growing from single prokaryotes into colonies or embryos developing organs. In humans, neural networks form during childhood, all directed toward increasing complexity for better thriving. Do you value gaining new knowledge and skills and growing as a person? If you're a parent, how important is it that your children grow into healthy, functioning adults, physically, psychologically, and emotionally? Life is creative, it's exploratory and innovative, and it evolves. Horizontal gene transfer in bacteria introduces novel DNA for resistance. Curious exploration in rats uncovers food sources, serving survival in changing environments. And living things change over generations to better adapt to changing environments. Life selects traits that enhance fitness. At the cellular level, bacteria evolve antibiotic resistance via mutations under pressure, passing on advantageous genes. In animal populations, for instance, the finch beaks evolved to adapt to changing food sources. Have you ever moved somewhere different or taken a new job and valued your ability to adapt to that new setting? Life is hierarchically organized, both in individual organisms and groups. It values structured layers for efficient coordination. Cells form tissues, tissues form organs, systems work together for the whole organism. In groups, ant colonies have queen-worker hierarchies, and human societies form governments, all optimizing resource allocation and decision-making for collective well-being. Have you ever worked someplace with poor leadership and wished wise people would take responsibility for creating a better structure for collaboration and getting the work done? Or maybe you've been in a leadership role and value your own capacity to do this. Life transmits traits across generations, genetically ensuring continuity of successful adaptations. DNA replication in cells copies genes faithfully during division, as in meiosis for gametes. Beyond strictly physical transmission, birds teach songs to offspring, and humans pass knowledge via education, preserving values like cooperation for future thriving. Do you value the role of parents and educators in transmitting knowledge and cultural heritage to the next generation? Did you not benefit from this yourself? Imagine how we would be living now if the transmission of culture never happened. Life is compartmentally organized. We see this from the level of cell walls to national borders. Life values boundaries to protect integrity and control exchanges. Cellular membranes in prokaryotes separate internal processes from the environment, regulating nutrient intake. In larger scales, skin in animals or national borders in societies maintain identity and security, preventing chaos while allowing selective interactions. Are you not glad that your home has walls and doors that lock, and passwords that are required for accessing things on your computer? Do you not value boundaries in your own relationships? Life values freedom. I define freedom as resistance or evasion of oppressive forces that inhibit the pursuit of needs. At the cellular level, bacteria flee high salinity areas via flagella, evading threats. In animals, migration evades predators or scarcity, and humans resist tyranny. Living things possess degrees of agency that serve their survival. Take a moment to feel how you value your own ability to pursue your goals, free of oppressive forces. Life values both competition and collaboration. It balances rivalry for resources with partnerships for mutual gain. Think of bees in a hive. Workers compete for roles like foraging, each pushing to survive, yet they collaborate through the waggle dance to share food finds and swarm against threats, building a thriving colony. This dance of rivalry and unity, rooted in life's telos, scales to human teams or ecosystems, driving both individual and collective success. Have you ever enjoyed competitive games or sports, even as a spectator? Have you ever enjoyed being part of a collaborative group working toward a shared goal? Repair, regeneration, and healing demonstrate life's value in restoring function after damage. DNA repair enzymes in cells that fix mutations from UV light, preventing cancer. Starfish regenerate limbs, and wound healing in skin closes breaches, ensuring continued survival. How much do you value your body's ability to heal wounds and recover from illness? How important is it to you to be able to repair a relationship with a loved one when trust has been broken? And finally, believe it or not, life values self-sacrifice or altruism. If we even believe it's possible, we typically imagine it's a characteristic of the unique nobility of human beings. But life does value individual loss for the sake of collective gain. Programmed cell death and embryos sculpt fingers by sacrificing cells, shaping the organism for better survival and development. Worker bees sting intruders, dying to protect the hive. Beyond these, consider the meerkat sentinels in the animal kingdom. Individuals stand guard, risking predation to alert the group to danger, ensuring the colony's survival while often sacrificing their own safety, a behavior driven by kin selection to protect genetic relatives. This value of altruism, rooted in life's telos, scales up in ways we can recognize. In humans, we see this in everyday acts that echo our biological heritage. A firefighter rushes into a burning building to save strangers, risking death for the collective good. During wartime, soldiers fall on grenades to shield their comrades, a deliberate sacrifice that saves the unit. Even in quieter moments, a parent skips meals to feed their children. These examples show that self-sacrifice isn't just a noble ideal, it's an intrinsic value woven into life, from cells to societies, guiding us when we align with our deepest nature. Have you ever felt grateful for someone else making a sacrifice on your behalf? Have you ever been inclined to do the same for others? Okay, you still with me? Of course, if you heard that question, then you're still here. So let's press on. Whether we're conscious of it or not, all these biological functions are part of us. Other forms of life, from single cells on up, do not name and think about these functions abstractly, as values. Yet these intrinsic values form the bedrock of life's telos, expressed from the humblest cells to our own societies. They ground everything from primitive survival to human ethics. Now that we've laid out these intrinsic values, those deep directives of life's telos, from seeking resources to self-sacrifice, let's consider how humans, with our remarkable self-awareness, have taken these and shaped them into something more. Virtues. Virtues are the attitudes or qualities we cultivate to orient ourselves toward enacting these values, turning raw biological imperatives into intentional ways of living. Virtues are not separate from life's telos, but an extension of it, a bridge between our cellular origins and our cultural aspirations. Think of them as symbolic tools we forged from the same metal. Virtues have biological roots we can trace. Courage, for instance, builds on the value of freedom, evasion of threats, as seen in cells resisting toxins or animals fleeing predators. But in humans, it's the deliberate choice to face fear for a greater good, like a parent protecting their child. Compassion emerges from cooperation, where cells like mitochondria partner for mutual survival, scaling to our acts of empathy in communities. Even justice, refining hierarchical organization, mirrors how cells coordinate in tissues for collective thriving, evolving into our sense of fairness in societies. Virtues are powerful because they require us to consciously reflect and choose, unlike values which often operate instinctively. This makes them a brilliant human invention, helping us navigate our complex lives with purpose. My argument so far has been that values are intrinsic to life and that virtues are human conceptualizations that orient us toward a deliberate embodiment of those values. So far, so good. Now, I want to talk about how, despite our good intentions, we can and do become misaligned with life's values. This leads us to two key concepts: reification and totalization. Reification occurs when we treat a dynamic contextual process, like a value rooted in life's fluid adaptations, as a fixed concrete thing, separate from its origins. It's like turning a living river into an ice sculpture. We lose the flow and contextual embeddedness that make it vital. Totalization takes this further, elevating the reified value to an absolute, all-encompassing principle that overrides everything else, ignoring trade-offs or balances with other values. The values intrinsic to nature exist collectively in constant flux and interaction. They are an ecosystem of values. Our dissociation from Life Telos stems from our powerful abstract thinking, which is brilliant on the one hand, but problematic when it severs us from embodied reality. The consequences? Ideological possession, where the value becomes an obsession, a single lens for seeing, evaluating, and taking action in the world. Ultimately, this leads to personal, social, and cultural turmoil, mental health strains, conflicts, or even existential threats to survival and reproduction. To illustrate this, let's explore how each of life's intrinsic values, which I've named, can be reified and totalized, and the predictable outcomes that come from that. We'll see patterns. Reification rigidifies the value. Totalization amplifies it unchecked, often resulting in imbalance, harm, or backlash. Animals, lacking our capacity for abstraction, naturally avoid this. I'm not condemning abstraction. I'm merely pointing out its capacity to veer us out of alignment with the foundational orientation of life. Before exploring the consequences of reification and totalization for each value separately, I want to name the general existential consequence of not recognizing values as intrinsic to life. In a word, alienation. Whether or not we have words to describe it, many of us feel disconnected from the circle of life around and within us. Our skin-encapsulated ego, as Alan Watts called it, feels particularized and isolated from the rest of life. We feel alone in our subjective world of thoughts and feelings. We feel no root for our purpose, values, or sense of meaning. With the so-called death of God and rejection of religious doctrine to give us a sense of direction, this sets the stage for drift into nihilistic despair or latching onto some ideological doctrine as our gospel. Perhaps this can help us to understand our tendency for reification and totalization. But now, let's turn to each of the 12 values that I've identified. Starting with seeking and consuming resources while avoiding or fending off threats. Reified, this becomes acquisition as an end in itself, detached from needs. Think of hoarding without purpose. Totalized, it's relentless consumerism, overriding sustainability. Consequences include resource depletion and environmental collapse from overconsumption. It can also contribute to chronic anxiety, as the body remains in perpetual fight or flight, eroding health and relationships. Elimination of waste and toxins reifies into purity obsessions, like extreme detoxification fads ignoring natural balances. Totalized and manifests as purges, cultural cleansing, witch hunts, and cancel culture that target perceived moral impurities in others. Observable outcomes: weakened systems, from immune deficiencies in over-sanitized environments and societal divisions in ideological purges, hindering dialogue and collaboration. Homeostasis, or the value of stability, reifies as a rigid structure resisting all change. Totalized, it becomes stagnation, like conservative ideologies blocking adaptation to new circumstances. Failure to adapt to novelty leaves people and cultures vulnerable to shocks. Individuals stuck in rigid patterns of thinking and behavior can suffer a range of mental health issues. Social groups and cultures that demand adherence to rigid ideologies and codes of behavior become authoritarian and tyrannical and ultimately dysfunctional. Growth and development can become reified into endless expansion, detached from actual maturity. Totalized, its economic models prioritizing GDP over sustainability. Predictable results: burnout, resource exhaustion, or societal bubbles bursting, as seen in boom-bust cycles that disrupt reproduction and long-term survival. Creativity, that spark of exploration, innovation, and evolution that drives life to adapt and thrive, is reified into a compulsion for constant novelty, detached from purpose. Totalized, it becomes disruptive change for its own sake. Think of tech startups obsessed with a reinvention, or cultures chasing trends without roots. Consequences include instability, like economic bubbles bursting from overhyped innovations, or personal exhaustion from relentless pursuit of the next new thing, a pursuit that erodes stability and meaningful growth, leaving communities fragmented and individuals burned out. Hierarchical organization becomes reified into immutable power structures that neglect the responsibility of the whole to its parts. It's authoritarianism, where leaders are deified, given total control, and feedback is suppressed. Consequences: corruption and revolts, as severe inequalities hamper group thriving. Transmitting traits across generations reifies as rigid inheritance, like dogmatic traditions. Totalized, it's eugenics, or cultural imperialism forcing uniformity. Observable harms: loss of diversity, generational trauma from suppressing and punishing variations, or simply cultural stagnation as a result of blocking adaptation to new threats. Compartmentalized organization reifies into absolute boundaries, like impermeable walls. Totalized, it's isolationism or xenophobia, rejecting all exchange. Results: stagnation from lack of input, weakening overall resistance and collaboration. Freedom, as resistance to oppression, reifies into unchecked individualism, ignoring constraints. Totalized, it's anarchy or libertarian extremes, dismissing collective responsibility. Consequences: chaos, as in societies fragmenting without cooperation, or personal addictions evading all constraint, eroding health and group survival. Competition and collaboration reify into binary oppositions. One or the other is supreme. Totalized, pure competition breeds ruthless exploitation. For instance, market monopolies destroying ecosystems, while forced collaboration stifles innovation. Think of the worst excesses of capitalism and communism. Repair, regeneration, and healing reifies as constant fixing without prevention. Totalized, it's obsessive restoration, like plastic surgery cultures or endless therapy without growth. Or societal healing movements that reopen wounds, delaying true adaptation and thriving. Finally, the self-sacrifice or altruism reifies into martyrdom as a virtue. Totalized, it's cults demanding absolute loyalty, overriding self-preservation. Results: exploitation and societal burnout from endless giving without reciprocity. threatening group survival. In addition to these 12 values, just to suggest the wider scope, here are a few more that I can name, but I won't unpack. Sensing, perception, and information processing, energy efficiency or conservation, diversity or variation, symbiosis or mutualism, mate selection. As we see, reification and totalization distort life's balanced telos, turning adaptive values into rigid ideologies that breed conflict and disconnection. The observable consequences range from personal mental health struggles to cultural upheavals. Let's bring these ideas into the real world, where they hit close to home. The divisive, contentious relationship between the political far right and far left. This polarization can be seen as each side cherry-picking a subset of life's intrinsic values and reifying, then totalizing them into rigid ideologies. The far left might latch onto freedom as radical individual liberation from any collective norms, creativity as constant disruption, and collaboration as something attained by enforced equity. This elevates these to absolutes for reshaping society, come hell or high water. The far right, on the other hand, tends to reify and totalize hierarchical organization, transmitting fixed traits through tradition and compartmentalized organization via strict borders, treating them as unchangeable truths. Both draw from life's adaptive wisdom. Freedom fuels innovation, hierarchy coordinates resources, but reification freezes them, and totalization overrides the balance with other values. The real trouble brews when each side sees the other's values as pathological or even evil. There can be the assumption that values outside of their own chosen commitments can only be held in totalized, distorted, and harmful ways. For the left, the right's hierarchical organization can be pathologized as an evil, oppressive tyranny, predicting injustice and stagnation. The left tends to ignore its role in efficient decision-making. The right, in turn, might view the left's advocacy for individual freedom as leading inevitably to chaos and anarchy, foreseeing societal collapse. It overlooks its adaptive agency in resisting oppressive threats. From a far-right perspective, the left's version of collaboration could be seen as an erasure of merit and competition, while transmitting traits on the right might be condemned as racist and cultural imperialism. This mutual pathologizing, echoing Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory, which traces moral intuitions to evolutionary roots, but stops short of naming this distortion, turns dialogue into demonization. The consequences are all around us. Mental strain from ideological possession, social rifts fracturing cooperation, and political gridlock threatening collective survival. Yet, this divide isn't inevitable. Recognizing intrinsic life values as an interdependent ecosystem where freedom balances hierarchy, creativity complements tradition, offers a path to realign with telos. While political division and antagonism may be the macro level where reification and totalization can be seen to cause problems, we also experience this much more personally in our close and intimate relationships. Because we see our own values as our selection for a perfect meal from a menu of abstract options, rather than recognizing the full ecosystem of values that we live in and from, we fail to appreciate each other's perspectives. Even if the other person is clearly reified and totalized their chosen values and is on a crash course with reality, we could at least recognize the validity of where that value originates from. This alone might stop us from demonizing the other and open the possibility for a real dialogue. We might even be open to the possibility that we have reified and totalized our own values, and be open to letting them be contextualized and balanced by other important values being expressed by another. Does that sound wildly improbable? Maybe. It would be naive to underestimate how possessed people can be by their ideological commitments to reified and totalized values, including ourselves. But cynical not to try to imagine a way forward. and I refuse to be cynical or naive. With that, I think I've said all I have to say for now. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. I hope I've given you something to think about, something that will help you clarify and align with your own values in a deep way. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Bye for now.